Hey guys, first Regardsman here, and today I'll be talking about more Space Marine 2 news regarding the upcoming heroic weapons in patch 12, the Techmarine class details, and the new chapter DLC pack heads, and Saber's comments on whether or not we will see a Librarian or other classes added to the game after Techmarine, on top of whether or not Saber plans on revisiting founding chapters and other popular successor cosmetics in future cosmetic packs. Since a lot of people are still very curious as to when Techmarine actually comes out, Techmarine is set to be released in a few weeks according to a recent Xbox Wire article, and is also confirmed to be a free update. So when the game launches on Xbox and PC Game Pass on the 29th, you will be able to play the Techmarine upon its official release as well. The early access public test server for the Techmarine is set to be released this week exclusively on the PC version of Space Marine 2 as well. This will include not only the Techmarine class as playable early access, but also the brand new PvE operation, new heroic weapons, and potentially even the new chapter DLC heads. Now, we're not really sure if this will be playable on the PC Game Pass, as there has been no official statement on this. I expect it won't be though, and will be reserved for directly purchased copies of the game. But I will be streaming the early access of Techmarine upon its release regardless, so if you don't have a PC and that interests you, there will be early access gameplay on this channel. Techmarine is also the first new class ever added to Space Marine 2, and is probably the most anticipated update for this game that we have ever seen, as new classes are generally one of the best things you can actually add to your Horde shooter, opening up new team comps, new leveling experiences, and builds, which is kind of a fundamental aspect of any Horde shooter. This is why the player base, myself included, have talked about potential new classes like an Apothecary or Librarian before, because once the base game for your Horde shooter is in a good spot, expanding the sandbox is one of the best ways to make existing content feel fresh beyond things like a brand new faction. Surprisingly, Saber Interactive has actually commented on the potential of new classes before, and not only that, but directly on the topic of if we will ever see a Primaris Librarian class added to Space Marine 2. One player asked Saber directly if it's possible for us to see a Librarian class added to Space Marine 2, and if it's not going to be added, what the reasons are. Saber's community manager responded by saying, no, we will not be seeing a Librarian class added to Space Marine 2, mainly because they have no intentions of adding psychic powers. So there you have it. As of right now, there are zero plans for Librarian class or any type of psychic powers in Space Marine 2. I don't think that's all that shocking. Librarians would be pretty hard to implement into the game, as they are usually some of the most powerful Astartes a chapter has to offer in comparison to the current class archetypes we have. I've had my fair share of cope about Librarian class before, but if we're being realistic, the most likely event for a Librarian class would be as a class option in Space Marine 3 rather than Space Marine 2, as it would be a pretty major addition. But let me know what you guys think about a Librarian class in the comments below. I've seen a lot of different opinions on this from the player base, so I'm curious to hear yours. Now, Saber also commented on whether or not we will see any new classes added to Space Marine 2 after Techmarine launches, such as an Apothecary. Saber's community manager directly responded to this as well, saying that at the moment, there are no new classes planned for Space Marine 2 at all. Now, that may sound disappointing to some, but there's also some good news here as well, because the community manager did not say we will never see a new class added after Techmarine, stating that we should wait for the Techmarine's release first, and then talk about any future classes. It does sound like Saber is primarily waiting to see how well Techmarine performs and Year 2 as a whole before committing more resources for additional classes. Previously, the creative director said he was a big proponent of adding a chaplain class, so I'm sure there have been many discussions about potential classes to be added at Saber Interactive. Even prior to the game's initial launch in 2024, Saber did come out in interviews saying they did have plans for additional classes post-launch. Now, my take on this is if the Techmarine pops off, if the player-based response is widely positive, we are likely to see another class added to Space Marine 2 eventually. Now, we do not know for 100% certain if Space Marine 2 will have a Year 3 pass. Even the community managers themselves are unaware of this currently, but they did confirm that we will be getting new content for Space Marine 2 for quite some time, and previous Saber Interactive titles like World War Z are still getting updates and crossover events to this very day, so I think a Space Marine 2 update plan is pretty likely. But I think that the biggest indicator towards a Year 3 pass is that recently the parent company of Focus, Pull Up Entertainment, posted their earnings report, and in the year of 2025, their back catalog was one of their primary sources of revenue, with new release revenue down by around 70%, which is a pretty big way of telling where the company is likely to allocate resources or attempt further monetization, which in this case would be games like Space Marine 2 that has been getting more DLC this year than the previous year, with things like the Chapter Head DLC pack we'll talk more about later. So I'm pretty confident a year 3 pass of some sorts is in the works, and we will likely see an official announcement for this around the Warhammer Skulls event in May, or later in the summer after year 2 officially wraps up its content drops, the same way we saw them announce the year 2 towards the end of August last year after patch 9. So let me know what you guys think about this. I know a year 3 pass is a bit of a hot button topic in Space Marine 2's community, and if you want a slightly more in-depth discussion on Saber's earning report, I'll put a link to a video with my friend Jefficus in the info card in the upper right of the screen where we went into this in far more detail. Now, the next thing we'll talk about here are the upcoming heroics in patch 12. The Techmarine update is set to have 3 new heroic weapons, rather than the previous 6 that were added in patch 10 and patch 11. Now, a big question players have had is which weapons will these heroic variants even be for? Power Axe was one of the most likely weapons players have pointed to, but we actually got confirmation as to what type of weapons these will be for in patch 12. Saber has confirmed that we will be getting 2 new melee heroics and 1 new range heroic in the Techmarine update. I am almost 100% confident that at least one of these will be for the Power Axe, as it is the only melee weapon in-game currently with no heroic variant, and as for the second melee weapon, I'm a little less confident on this one, but I expect we will see it on the newly added Omniscion Axe, as this would make it so every melee weapon in the game has a heroic option. And on top of that, it would also mean that players who have been dedicated to the game and have been grinding their accolades through the stratagems mode since patch 11 will be rewarded and able to purchase a heroic Omniscion Axe immediately. This would make leveling your Omniscion Axe easier as well, since heroic variants have a relic tier stats and can be used even if you only have access to a standard issue version of the weapon. I think that having fewer heroics this time around is pretty understandable because we are getting an entirely new class and a new PvE operation. On the note of new heroic cosmetics, however, Saber did come out and say there will be no new heroic cosmetics added into patch 12.0. There is a silver lining to this though, as Saber did come out and say we will be getting previous Twitch drops added to the Accolade store in this patch. We don't know which ones these will be, but I assume it is going to have the Aquila chestplate that a lot of players have wanted, and the Twitch drops only cost you requisition points in the store, so this should be very easy for everyone to obtain. As for other limited time cosmetics like the previously added Phobos Infiltrator helmet that was added during a community event, a community manager did confirm that these are not planned to be added to the Accolade store in patch 12.0. That might be sad news to some, as the Infiltrator helmet was quite popular on release, but this does not mean it will never be added to the store, just that it won't be added into patch 12.0. Saber has also made a pretty big effort to not have limited time cosmetics tied to the pros website anymore. This was a fairly large complaint that players had, which is why the recently added Death and Glory Greaves did not have any pros requirement compared to prior limited time cosmetics. As for the upcoming chapter DLC heads, this is confirmed to be launching in patch 12, and more importantly, Saber has talked about the potential of adding these to the upcoming public test server on top of this. The community manager stated that while this is not 100% guaranteed yet, they have been pushing for it, as it's a great way for players to get an idea of what they're buying before the official release. So these could be usable very soon. I hope they do wind up adding them to the PTS, as the chapter heads are a separate DLC from the Season Pass 2, and giving players a better idea of what they are purchasing beforehand is a pretty huge win for the community in my opinion. Saber has also talked about potentially adding even more chapter heads and voice lines in future DLCs for things like Raven Guard and other chapters. I'm assuming they're waiting to see how well the current DLC heads perform in sales though before committing to another pack. But like most cosmetics in Space Marine 2, I imagine despite any grumblings, they will sell very well because 40k fans cannot help themselves. I mean, I bought a Wardens of Ultramar box set for like $70. It's probably going to be the cheapest thing for 40k I've bought all year, so I am looking forward to DLC heads, but I know there is some controversy here. So we will probably be seeing not just one, but many more chapter DLC head packs in the future, as one of the biggest draws of Space Marines in general is the unique characteristics of each chapter, and this game has been all Ultramarines up until this DLC. Something else I want to talk about here are the future cosmetic DLCs that Saber has commented on a little bit. With most of the founding chapter cosmetic packs already being released and an Iron Hands chapter pack on the horizon, Saber was asked if we will be seeing any return to the founding chapters in future cosmetic packs such as the Dark Angels. Saber's response was a simple "you'll see," but given the popularity of founding chapters like the Dark Angels, I expect we are likely to see a return to multiple founding chapters. To expand on this even further, Saber previously stated they want to prioritize a greatsword over other melee weapons, greatswords being a fairly rare weapon type compared to other things such as lightning claws, and one of the major users of greatswords such as the Calibanite greatswords are, guess who, the Dark Angels. So if they do wind up putting out a greatsword as they already expressed interest in doing, launching this alongside a Dark Angels cosmetic pack would make a lot of sense. Either way, we are likely to see this in a year 3 because the only melee weapon that is confirmed still coming to Space Marine 2 in year 2 is the Omniscient Axe on the Techmarine class. But that is pretty much everything I wanted to cover in this one, guys. Let me know what you think about the upcoming heroic weapons, which melee weapons you think they're going to be for, and how you feel about Saber's plans on new classes in Space Marine 2. I think the future of Space Marine 2 is looking very bright, and I am incredibly excited for Techmarine. I will be streaming the public test server for this class, or I'm already doing it depending on when I post this video. But if you want to catch me live to ask me questions about the game, or just come hang out, then you can find me here on YouTube or on Twitch with a link in the video description alongside a link to my community Discord. I also want to say a special thanks to my channel members as you help me make guides and keep the channel alive, and as always, thank you for watching. If you like content like this, subscribe for more, and take it easy. Bye.